So good morning again. I want to thank my good friend, I think he's a friend, Robert Langford, for this opportunity to moderate this panel. Um, it's going to be interesting for me to be a moderator, and my brother Socrates said to me before I left the office today, he said, now you understand what moderate means, right? You don't get to make statements. So I'm going to do my best. We appreciate all of you young men agreeing to be part of this panel for Operation Shoestrings Conversation with Community. And it is a conversation. It's going to be a little difficult because we will be talking while they will be eating. Yeah. But we are going to move forward expeditiously.
Does that mean we don't get to eat?
Mayor, we're going to get you something to eat. Be sure of that.
Sacrifice.
But what we want to do is to have just kind of a round-robin conversation as if we were sitting in the living room or around the Thanksgiving table. Maybe that's not a good idea. I mean, I've been at some Thanksgiving meals that got to be fairly interesting. But we have some framing questions, so I'd like to just get right into it. And of course, we have with us, I don't think any of you out in the audience don't know who these people are, but we have with us Governor Haley Barbour, who was the governor of the state of Mississippi from 2004 to 2012. Mayor Chokwe Lumumba, who is the mayor of the city of Jackson, was elected in June of this year, but of course has served on the Jackson City Council prior to that. Has had much history with the city of Jackson. And Reverend Keith Tonkel, who we all know as pastor of Wells United Methodist Church, who's been very active in the community at large, and particularly on the Bailey Avenue and Central Jackson areas, in the Bailey Avenue and Central Jackson areas since 1969. And I understand, Reverend Tonkel, you've been on Operation Shoestrings board for about all of that time. So yes, you really have been supportive of these efforts. So I'll get right into the questions. I had just a little conversation prior to getting up here with some of you. And we know that of the three of you, all three of you, have lived in Jackson or around Jackson for a number of years, but you came to Jackson from some other city or town. So just in terms of, so people can get to know a little about you and your connection to the city of Jackson, if you would all just respond, and we can go in this order, and then we'll just see how the conversation goes. Well, Governor Barbour, we'll start with you. You have a deep affiliation for the city of Jackson, you have expressed, and rightfully so, and you talk about that. But when you were asked to, and this question is for all three, when you were asked to participate in today's conversation with community about the future of Jackson, why did you say yes, and what is your connection to the city, and why is Jackson's future, in your mind, important to all of us?
Well, Lita, thank you for those three questions.
Those three questions.
To get us started. First of all, you know, a lot of my career I've been a lobbyist, and please eat. You know, it doesn't bother me a bit. I'm used to people eating while I'm talking. And, but so please, when it comes, please eat it. You know, there are a couple of things. First of all, a state has to have a successful, vibrant capital. A lot of people don't ever see any place in Mississippi but Jackson, and they judge us based on that. And so, as I said a lot of times when I was a governor, it really is important to everybody, even if you don't ever visit Jackson, if you're a Mississippian, that our capital city be seen as successful, to be attractive, to be a place where people want to go, people where you want to do business. And so I think everybody in the state, I live in Yazoo City, I don't live here, and except for the 8 years that I was privileged to be governor and live in the nicest public housing in the state, I've never lived here. but it is important to everybody. It's secondarily important to me in that my mother's given name was LaFleur. And back in generations, that was a family name. The city of Jackson was founded as LaFleur's Bluff around the turn of the 19th century by my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Louis LaFleur. And the state capitol's a couple of blocks down the ridge from where that was. But whether you've ever had any other relationship with Jackson or not, if an organization like this that's done so much for Jackson over 45 years is raising money to take that money to try to put it to use to improve the community and improve the lives of families and particularly children in Central Jackson, how could you not want to be part of this?
Thank you. Mayor Lumumba, would you go next, and then I'll come to Reverend Tonko, who's spent a lot of his time and life right here in Central City, Jackson. So.
Well, I'm working. One city, one aim, one destiny. And so I think this is an opportunity to come here and to share with folks and to share with the governor and with Reverend Tonko some of our thinking. I think that we, in that aim, that one city, one aim, one destiny, have to be able to cross bridges of each other's thinking, be able to analyze where we are. And I've found that to be very fruitful since I've been in the office of mayor. You know, before I was elected in many places in the city, I was like the boogeyman, right? Okay. But I think that having an opportunity to talk to people, I think they understand that we're about serious business, about making Jackson the greatest it can be. And so I think it's important to have these kind of conversations and to help close the gap. Jackson, to me, in terms of why do it for Jackson, I think this is probably the most special place on earth right now. I really believe that now. I might be not get everybody's agreement on that, but I think it's special because important things happen in the right place with the right people at the right time. I think we are the right people. We're people who carry a certain history, all of us, and on different sides of history in some aspects, to settle some of the most pressing questions of the decade, of the year, of the time. We're in the right place. We're in a place which has been categorically, statistically at the bottom of the ladder. But we're about now to try to make a step on it and try to put it at the top of the ladder. And then finally, it's the right time. It's the time that people are now demanding that we discuss these issues together and that we come to some collective conclusions. And I think that it's very clear that our destiny is going to be the same. So either we're going to get it together and do it the right way, or we're all going to suffer from the failure to do so together. So I feel real special that God has blessed us to be here at this time with these people in this place. Right.
Thank you. Reverend Tonko, your vantage point has been a little different than the other two gentlemen, except I do know that, just a little personal point here, I have a son who's a basketball coach, and I do know that many years before the mayor was involved in politics, that he was very much involved in coaching and providing opportunities for young people through basketball and summer programming. So I appreciate that. But Reverend Tonko, you have kind of the best vantage point for what we're talking about today and how we can move Jackson forward and have it be strong as a core city. Because you are in the neighborhood that we're talking about, the Bailey Avenue neighborhood, and been there for a number of years. So what's your take on what we need to do here?
Well, my take on it, first of all, is the thanks to be able to be a part of all this. When Robert asked me to be on the panel, I wondered if he was conscious or not.
Excuse me, can you all hear, Reverend Tonko?
Can you hear?
Now,
He,
is it-
Robert came and said, Keith, would you be a part of this panel? And I wondered if he was really conscious or not at that particular time. And because I said, gosh, I can't sit with people of that caliber. And he said, yeah, you can. And so what I want to say, when Robert was talking just a minute ago, he said, you know, we don't sit on the same stage all the time. That's good, but the truth is that we do sit on the same stage. We're sitting on the stage of Jackson, Mississippi, many of us, and many of us are here for that particular purpose. I came from the Big Easy and asked specifically to come to Jackson, and even more specifically than that, to come to that area in the inner city. My late wife and I drove up with our U-Haul behind us, feeling this is where we were supposed to be and where God wanted us to be. And it's been a good experience. It's been a good run. It's been a good time. It's funny because on the way up here, something came to mind that I had learned a long time ago, a very long time ago in seminary. If you want to know what movements of life are all about, just recently I celebrated the 50th anniversary of my graduation from graduate school. Lord. Anyway, there's a passage in the book of Jeremiah in 29:7. It's kind of interesting, and you expect a little bit of this from the preacher, but what it says is this: seek the welfare of the city, because the welfare of the city will determine your welfare. And that's why I'd like to be a part of a conversation, not just simply on the stage with these particular people, but in the continuing conversation that's open to us with one another.
Good point. Thank you. Thank you all. To get down just a little bit deeper here, those are opening statements and why we all are concerned about the city of Jackson, and we'll get deeper into that conversation in a minute. But Governor Barber and Mayor Lumumba and Reverend Tonko, all of you have strong public images. You are, as elected officials, as business people, as faith leaders, and you all come to this conversation with different vantage points. If you let your guard down, and what would you say to the representatives from the community out here about who you are, who you really truly are as individuals, what personally drives you, and and how does that relate to, as Reverend Tonko has said, how does that relate to your ability to feel the need and to want to see success for all of God's people, regardless of where they live and who they are, and as some people call the lottery of geography. So who are you really? And I'll start on this end. Mayor?
Well, you know, I've been blessed to have beautiful parents, and before them, grandparents, and lots and lots of relatives. My mother and father had 8 children. I was the second of 8. My mother came from a family of 15, and her mother was of a family of 15. So I love people, and I love justice. I love humanity, and I am absolutely dedicated to seeing humanity in our human rights fulfilled. So I'm a passionate fighter for human rights. I always have been since I decided I couldn't be an NBA basketball player. So I think those are the things that drive me. And I actually was born in the city of Detroit, Michigan. But there's a lot of things there that happened in, I guess what we call the ghetto, which kind of motivated that kind of a spirit, fighting and thrust. And I continue to do that today. So that really drives me. And I think that's probably what brings me to Mississippi, because I think that the struggle for rights and the struggle for human rights is central to us accomplishing the things that we have to accomplish in order to get our history straight, right? And to keep it straight.
Can you just describe for some of us are steeped in understanding what human rights refers to, but could you just break down a little bit when you say that you support the rights of all people and their human rights. What exactly? A little bit more into that. Not a long diatribe.
Yeah. We'll try to be as brief as possible. First of all, those are rights we have as human beings. We're born with those rights. We had them before any constitution, and we will always have them. And human rights include rights of expression. A lot of things that are human rights actually are inculcated into the Constitution of the United States and in other documents. But they're rights that you have of expression. Human rights are economic rights. It's a human right to have a decent and a livable income in a job. It's not just something that people can give you and take it away unless they take away your human rights. It's a human right for security, to live in a place where you can get some source of security and not be killed or robbed or things of that nature. So a lot of the things that we recognize are things we are fighting for, and prosperity and security, are actually human rights. Human rights, health care is a human right. It's not something you can just take from people.
Okay, thank you. I think that that kind of sheds more light on what's driving where you are. Reverend Tonko, who are you deep down inside? What we kind of have an idea of what drives you personally, but
let me say,
speak
first
to
of
that a
all,
little.
I'm a sinner being saved by the grace of God. I'm thankful for that. I'm a human being that's very grateful to be here, extremely grateful to be here today, which is another story. Long time ago, I born in New Orleans, lived on the coast, and I began to realize that there was a need for us to look for a unity that was bigger than our diversity. To find a place where the common good was more important than the personal good. And so that's kind of the kind of thing that drove my early life and brought me into the ministry. It's the last thing in the world I thought I would do, is to be a preacher. And my mom was a New Orleans debutante. My daddy was a real famous nightclub entertainer. And so I had the best of both worlds. I learned the street from daddy, and I learned the heights from mama.
That's a story.
So, but it was interesting because both of those people, Dad was from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Mom from New Orleans. But each of those people had an unusual commitment to human rights, to seeing to it that everybody got a break. We didn't know all the language, but we did that. And just one little example is Mom was often criticized because we would have racially inclusive meals at the house, stuff like that. This is a long time ago. But I grew with that impetus of the people that said, let's look for what's good for us all instead of just for some of us. That drives me.
Governor Barber, I don't know how many people think they know who you are and what drives you personally, and all kinds of stories. But what do you say to us? What drives you? And how do you come to be the successful businessman, politician that you are?
Well, I don't know what drives me. I grew up in Yazoo City. My daddy died when I was 2 years old. And my mother never remarried, raised my two older brothers and me in Yazoo City. And I learned a tremendous amount from her, never missed anything in life, as far as I could tell. But what I learned was your job get results. You're supposed to, that my job, if I'm a student, or if I'm a high school baseball player, or if I'm a high school football player, or I'm a student government official at Ole Miss, my job is to get the job done. And that's about work. It's about the attitude of work, and it's about learning to do work. It's about education and attitude. And so Socrates Garrett, somebody you know, about the second year I was governor, he had a newspaper that he was involved with, and they had an editorial that I've always really valued. He said about Governor Barber, he said, I don't know why people are complaining. He's only doing what he said he was going to do. And that's what I think you should be known for. Doing what you said you're going to do and working hard and trying to be a good example. One of the things that I'm proud of about our relationship with Operation Shoestring is I'm a counselor at Butler Snow. And at Butler Snow, we have kids from Operation Shoestring who come and intern there. And they intern in a place where they see people who work hard, who work long hours, who spent huge amounts of time, not to mention money, getting educated where they could do serious work. And so they see people who work, but they also see a place that's collegial, fun to work. People have a good time and enjoying what they do. You know, I taught my kids that one of the great blessings in life after a great marriage is to wake up in the morning and want to go to work. I mean, that's a great blessing in life, and I hope that Haley Barber stands for that, stands for getting the job done, and that means doing the work that needs to be done, but doing it in a way that is enjoyable and people want to go to work.
Hey, Governor Barber, you've mentioned one of the great programs operated by Operation Shoestring. That's the connection of young people to work and exposure to opportunities and life beyond what they see all the time, or may not see all the time. Just in follow-up to what you said about the young people who came to Butler Snow, what did you see in those young people?
Well,
Not what they saw in you, but what did you see in those young people who came?
kids that want to learn, that enjoy being there in the environment of work, that these, Robert has already made the point about superior performance in school by the children who are involved in this program. And of course, getting a good education is part of being able to be successful in work. It's aptitude, which comes from education, as well as attitude. But these kids look to me like they got tremendous attitudes that they're learning and they're lapping it up. And that's the way it ought to be. It's part of the reason that I agreed to be part of the program today, so we could get a bunch of these people here to give more money.
That's a good reason.
I noticed Robert clapped for that.
Reverend Tonko, you want to
If I might
something?
just add to that, Governor, you know, it's interesting because shoestring actually began in the physical environment of our church. They had some very forward-looking people that wanted this to happen, and we were able to become the catalyst for that to come to pass. But one of the things I found that's interesting about shoestring and important about shoestring, too, is that as new expectations and opportunities presented themselves, the program has shifted to that. When we first began, we basically did tutorial and trying to do whatever welfare help we could help to get people on their feet. But then we realized what we need to do is what Robert often says too, is to rise together. And the Butler Snow thing is an excellent example of that. And the kids working in a number of other places in town,
Right,
where they can see that you can get out of the Bailey Avenue neighborhood and where you can go a long way away. And I think that's a part of why an institution like Shoestring is important.
Yeah. Mayor Lumumba, you have done a lot of work with young people, probably a lot more than anybody knows about, and with your own resources as well. What do, for our young people who are in the Bailey Avenue neighborhood and other neighborhoods like that, what is it that you see, what is it that you see we need to do to make sure that all of those children have an opportunity and have a shot at a good life?
Well, of course, that's something we're working on all the time, and it needs to be worked on all the time. There are some things in the school system and in the city that we're trying to work on. Alignment Jackson is one. The People's Assembly, which created, has an education committee that's trying to work to get those together. My own personal experience has been with a lot of community organizations that have worked with a lot of children. And the one you know most about is because your son worked with me, was in the, what we call the Jackson Panther Basketball Organization, which was our way of mentoring young men in particular. We mentored hundreds of young men who, most of them, 95% of them went on to go to college. Some 99% of them graduated from high school. And so, but in the struggle, and in Bailey Avenue, you mentioned Bailey Avenue, particularly in the good work that Operation Shoestring is doing. I think the thing that we have to do is, first of all, we got to connect. Education is critical. So we got to get people educated. We got to connect education with life, with contemporary life, not life 100 years ago, not what their grandmothers used to do or their grandfathers used to do. So we got to look at, we got to look at school pedagogy, the pedagogy of teaching. We got to see, in Jackson, we do a good job of educating some smart kids. I mean, we got smart kids all over the place that go and become doctors and lawyers and professors and all that kind of stuff. Our problem is that we got half of the children, especially young black men, who don't finish school. And so that's the problem. So that's got to be the focus. And we need schools where these children want to go and to learn the right things. And so we don't need schools that just lecture them on what grandma did 100 years ago. We need schools that have the kind of pedagogy, the kind of simulations that we can use, real life simulations. That's why it helps to go to a law firm or something like that. But in the classroom, we got to bring the law firm. And perhaps the simplest way to explain this is, well, my son was an elementary school student, and his partners, they were not the best students in the world, okay? And then all of a sudden, they were at Davis Magnet School, which is a school which had a little more liberty in the way they could teach classes. And all of a sudden, he got real excited about school. My son was a fellow that would come to me, he had a headache, and sometimes he had a headache in his stomach and things that they didn't want to go to school. But all of a sudden, he wanted to go to school every day. He wanted to get me up every day and take him to school. So I started taking him to school and getting up real early. And then I got suspicious. I said, why is all of a sudden he wants to go to school? So I snuck in on a couple of the classes. A little bitty teacher, just about as big as the students. They're about fifth graders at that time, was teaching. And they're all in the floor drawing up maps and diagrams and things of that nature. And I still didn't quite get it. I didn't see why are these kids so captivated. No, they're quiet and all this kind of stuff. And on the way home, I found out in the car that the teacher had put Hansel and Gretel on trial for killing the wicked witch. Okay. Oh. And my son was a defense attorney along with some of the other kids. There was one of the prosecutors was in the car with me. And then after they got finished arguing with each other, the youngest fella in the back seat said, well, I'm the judge. I'm going to decide it all. Okay. So they were engaged. We can do that in medicine. We can do that with auto mechanics. We can do that with a lot of different fields of inquiry. But the pedagogy of teaching, and the other thing is know thyself. And this is something that I know from working in the community, working with my basketball team and other things. You have to work on young people's self-esteem. Yeah. Self-esteem does not start with them. It starts with where they come from and what they know about where they come from. If you have an education curriculum which ignores that or just drops in on Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech and then disappears again after that, you don't have the proper accent on education of these young kids that's going to motivate them. Now, there are certain children who come from sound parents, sound backgrounds, who are really engaged in education, who are going to learn no matter what, okay? I mean, and that's good. They're going to learn no matter. They're going to persevere because education is a certain value to them. And I compliment those parents out there who make sure that their children's on that route. But those who have lost so many of the supports from a normal education, you got to have something extra motivational. I mean, and that's something I've learned through my youth program.
We're going to continue the questions, but I think we'll pick, this is the conversation, way the conversation is going, but Robert did give me some questions, and I'm not looking over there at him.
May I just say something real quickly to that, though, because I think it's really important. I want to go to your question, but one of the things that we find, we have a lot of people that come each week on Tuesday morning to our church for some stuff that we do. And one of the things we find, particularly with the young guys, without a vision, the people perish. And these people think there's no escape. They think they're stuck in this place and there's no way out. And we're here sharing one another, which is important, but we're sharing stories. And this is just one story. His name is Joe.
broke the window out of the church, expected us to be real angry. We said, well, did you do it on purpose? And he said, no. And we said, well, let's fix it together, and we did. And we said, what do you want to do? He said, I don't know. Anyway, that young man now is a Jacksonian that owns 3 or 4 companies and is doing a wonderful work simply because somebody, got interested enough to say, hey, what is not the only possibility. There are other things available.
There's one of Mayor, you mentioned the line that Jackson at United Way is ably leading to model something that was done in Nashville called Alignment Nashville. Then there's, and that's working to pull together businesses and key members of the community to talk about how to wrap around the schools so that we are not just having the Joe story or the story of the young people that you were able to touch or the young people who were able to come to Butler Snow, but we've got, you all talked about how important education is. Then we've got the Metro Jackson Chambers Vision 22, all through there. Talk about the need for education and how important the core city is. There's Working Together Jackson, which is another grassroots coalition of people talking about doing the same kinds of things. So here's the question. If we know these things work, if we know that our schools are challenged, but we know that if we're going to have a strong central city, the city can be only as strong as all of its communities. Governor Barbour, you work with in business development all the time. You're out there in your lobbying firm. You know where the world is going in terms of what kind of jobs that's going to be out there. We know that we can't continue to have the dropout rates that we have in the central city of Jackson or in the city of Jackson and expect that the rising tide is going to lift all boats. If we get Vision 2020, if we get the health care corridor, if we get all of these things, unless we invest in all of our people. And some things, we got some challenges, some things you can't fix. But I always think, where I come from, that you can work with young people and you can make sure that they are successful. So all of these visionings and coalitions and collaborations, what does it take for us to move beyond the reports and the strategy meetings and get into these schools and into the school board and into the as you say, Mayor, the pedagogy now, because things are moving and the children, we got to do it now. So how would you all respond to that question? Governor Barbour.
Well, Lolita, I'm not familiar with a lot of these programs that you're talking about in Nashville here, but look, first of all, you got to face up to your problems. Mm-hmm. Don't kid yourself about your problems. And then you got to do the best you can with what you got to solve the problem. I think the starting place that everybody understands about education, where you get families involved in their children's education, their children do better. There's 100% chance of that. There's just 100% chance. And I was tickled when the mayor said how he was getting involved in his children's education when they got interested in school and Hansel and Gretel. And when mamas and daddies are interested in their children's education and spend some time in it, you can see the difference. When I was governor, I would go to little towns that are not wealthy, that are demographically look very similar to Jackson or Yazoo City, and they got great schools because the parents won't tolerate not having great schools. And so first of all, it's parental involvement. And the second thing, it seems to me, is where we're bogged down, we underutilize the church. The church can't take over the schools, can't run the schools constitutionally, but the church can be a huge factor in helping children, and not just the children that go to church, because frankly, the children whose mamas and daddies bring them to church, they're probably already in pretty good shape. But their kids in the neighborhood, and I will bet you if you look at Galloway across the street from Wells, that y'all already are involved in trying to help at-risk kids. But we need more of that. We need to encourage our churches to take this on. Take this on. You want to do something to help your community down the road? There's not a better way. And the last thing I would say is we have got to quit stigmatizing workforce development and skills training for our students. I mean, we act like we have kids that go to school and essentially get told if you don't go to the university, then you're a failure. You know, an automobile, you mentioned auto mechanics. An automobile mechanic in Jackson, Mississippi makes $70,000 a year. $70,000 a year for 5 years training. And man, that's twice the average wage in the state. If I got two little boys, 39 and 34. And 16 years ago at Reeves, our baby had decided he was going to go to Holmes and learn a trade instead of going to Ole Miss. And Marcia had gone to the beauty parlor and said, Reeves is not going to go to Ole Miss, he's going to go to Holmes, he's going to learn a trade. What would they say at the beauty parlor? Well, Marcia, what's wrong with him? Because we have so stigmatized skills training, and the number of jobs in the professions is a small fraction of the number of the jobs in the trades and the skills, and the money is great, the lifestyle, 2 cars on a boat. I mean, with people who work at Ingalls Shipyard or Severstal or Nissan, but we've got to have more and more and more of that. So there's 3 suggestions. That's the best I can do in 5 minutes.
So how do you put that into schools? How do you do that?
Let me pick
Mayor?
up on that for just a quick minute, because I'd like to say one thing that's important, and that is, this is something we can all work on, and that is encouraging families to be specifically involved in the school where the kids are, specifically in our neighborhood schools. We have a thing called Galloway Night, and we'll do this in May. We do it every May. And at that particular event, we'll have 250 people come from Galloway School. We work with the school all during the year. But they will come over and we'll have supper. Then we'll have a little program and all that kind of stuff. And what's significant about it is that's where they elect the teacher of the year. That's where they elect the staff of the year, because more parents come to that. And it seems to me that maybe just a simple invitation from time to time in different churches, different places, maybe some of us in the community could have an event where we invite people to come together and say, hey, it is so important for you parents to be involved in the school. The school's going to be as good or as bad as your interest. And the mayor uses the word passion very often, and that's what we really do need. We really need some real passion to say, not that our schools aren't performing as we would like for them, but how can we make them so much better? And that's one part of it, to really encourage circumstances and environments to get parents involved.
Now, Mayor, we respond to that, and I agree totally. We all agree that when you got parents involved in their children, in their children's education. But we don't have that all the time, but we still don't want to lose those children. And so Mayor, how do you respond to that?
Well, there's a couple of things. Number one is, I definitely agree that parental involvement is important, and I definitely agree that vocational training, as we used to call it, I don't know what they call it nowadays, but is definitely has to be incorporated back into the school system on a definite basis. We need a citywide education campaign, and it has to be something that we all take hold in. Lyman Jackson is focusing in on United Way is leading some of it, but they're focusing on the Jackson Public School District's plans and its goals, and then they have the Chamber of Commerce is involved, and then they have the city government involved. So that's a start. But really, it has to be a mass movement. That's what it has to be. The same kind of thing that brought civil rights into existence has to be geared up to try to get the schools going right. And when I say that, that means it's going to take workshops. It's going to take probably some door-to-door action. We got to go to some parents. And quite frankly, it's going to take some re-education because some of the teachers don't know what it is that they need to teach. And I'm not trying to be critical of the teachers, but you talk about pedagogy and know thyself curriculum. And you got to have, you're going to want to create an excitement for it. And that is what will get the children involved. We say old folks for counsel and young folks for action, right? Okay. So, but we got to get the children excited about change, about doing something different. And I think we can do that, like we've seen, we get excited about what we want to get excited about. We get excited about football games, basketball games, and that's because there's a lot of media and everything else put to play on getting you excited about those things. So we need to have committees set up, after school committees, during schools committees, that's going to incorporate the parents, the teachers, and everybody else into a energized campaign around our education system and a re-education, to some extent, campaign around our curriculum. So I think those are things that we can do and will do. In Jackson, there's some bad examples of people who haven't done that around the country. We don't want to follow those examples. We want to do something different. And then let me just say one final thing, and I'll leave it like this, is that philosophically, I think that businesses, people employ people, especially big businesses, employ a lot of people. You got to take in consideration that we have to put people before profits. We really do, especially when profits get to be so high, when it's not even enough room in the garage for another car. Okay? And that's very important. This is the reason why. Because the energy that we can save and have those people, like, we got people right now, we got two-parent families, good families, middle-class families, working all the time, spending relatively little time with their kids sometimes, or spending time with their kids at great sacrifice. We need to create more time when they can be with those kids, they can work in their communities. We got to get the village together. It says it takes a village to raise the children. Yeah. We got certain specific things about our village that we need to understand. We need to create the space and the time for these parents to work with their children. And so that's part of the business community, And when we can create that, especially with automation and things of that nature, which helps us as businesses, if we can create that time, then we will create a reinvestment into the lives of our children, to the education of our children, that will make it all work. And then the businesses will get the benefit of it, because they're going to be coming up with better educated children, better trained people, better folks involved in the system, and fresher people coming to these jobs. And so that was the old 4-day work week argument that we used to put out in Detroit all the time. But we need to focus on some of those.
So what I take is from the conversations, we have to be aggressive. We have to be as aggressive about this governor as we had to be about getting Nissan to come to town. We gotta have an agenda, and what you're saying, we gotta have an agenda. The agenda has to be the children. We gotta do whatever it takes to get them educated and on track. Now, I would be remiss to not say that we need more Operation Shoestrings.
I think we
need to have Operation Shoestring needs to have greater reach.
There's one thing, just real quick, excuse me, but we need to be aggressive, but it needs to be in a way that's not going to make somebody else afraid. And the reason I say that is
not going to make somebody else
afraid of our aggressiveness, our passion, our being present. For example, if we go with some ideas to different groups, to the school board, wherever we might be going, it needs to be welcomed rather than something that is being imposed. In a sense, it's kind of what we're trying to do here, to sit and talk together with one another about what makes things better for us all, to close the gap between the ideal and the actual. And we need to do that. But a lot of times, if we want to do something and we go to somebody They think we're intruding because we have a new idea, because we have another idea.
Well, Ralph Duncan, at what point is it time to intrude?
I think the point of the time to intrude is when you're not being heard at all. And when nobody wants to give you an opportunity to have something to say, hey, we're not here to be destructive. We're here to just offer some options and see if they work. I really think it's a matter of sitting and talking together and hearing one.
Is there, in Vision 2022, there's a lot of talk about the lake project, the One Lake project. If you had that kind of emphasis on communities in Jackson, you can look at the demographics and know where you need to go, and the school districts where you need to go. Governor, why is that not possible? The business people talking to the school people about what the young people are gonna need to know. The business, like the mayor said, bringing Butler Snow into the schools. How could we get something like that going so that, there's this old saying that if you go down and start working with people and get where you need to be, and then the leaders are going to look up and say, there go my people. I must rush to get in front of them, for I am their leader. So how do we go down to where we need to be and get this other involvement, not just on these kind of visionary, big picture things, but how do we get into community and help those families and those children be successful?
Well, let me say, you mentioned what used to be called the Two Lakes Project. I don't know what it's called today.
It's the One Lake Project.
The One Lake Project.
When I was governor, one of the things we tried to do to help Jackson was to encourage investment in Jackson. Buildings like the Pinnacle Building, like the restoration of the King Edward Hotel. Also, there were government projects like the federal courthouse, things that were done at Fondren. And what they all had in common? They produced jobs. We built this place right here while I was governor. I had to sign the legislation to give Jackson the right to have a referendum so that they could have a bond issue to do this, because that has to be permitted by the legislature. Why do we do it? So people could get work. That's why I assume that the Two Lakes Project, or the One Lake Project, that one reason that it's being emphasized by some people is to produce a lot of jobs. And what Jackson needs more work. Jackson needs more jobs. Jackson needs more people who have the opportunity for their children to see them every day, get up and go to work, and come back with the benefits of that for their families. That's what they learn at Butler Snow, that all those people out there get up and they go to work, they work hard, and that there's a benefit for that. So, I mean, I'm not involved in what the Jackson Chamber or Metro Chamber sets as their priority, but I assume it's just like what we were trying to do with all these big construction projects where, yeah, it makes Jackson look nicer, but it generated jobs that let people support themselves, and to have, we were talking about what's the most important thing about America? It's freedom. America is based on one great idea, and that's the idea of freedom. And freedom is political freedom, it's a lot of kind of freedom, but economic freedom, the power to take care of yourself and not have to be taken care of by somebody else. God, what a blessing that is. So I assume that's why they're talking about economic development projects like
Right,
that.
and that kind of dovetails back, and you and the mayor talk about it in different ways. He talks about it as a human right, and you talk about it as an economic freedom. I mean, it's some of it, some of the same thing. Same thing. I have to move on, and those of you in the audience, we have cards on the table, and I think people will be moving around collecting the cards for your questions. We have one more round here, and then we're going to go into, Robert, how are we doing on time? We have 10 minutes for questions. That's what I have. But let me just go to something that we all have to deal with, and we all have to come to terms with, and that is thank you. All of the things we talk about, and we know how we get where we are when people lack opportunity and lack good role models and are dropping out of school and doing the things that, you know, we get what we get. And so Jackson has a crime problem. And I'm gonna say this, Robert told me I couldn't say it, I'm gonna say it, and then I'm gonna go on from it. Jackson has a gun problem. And we won't get into, it's not a hunting gun problem, but we got a problem. So, in our last round, you know, all of these things, if you had good jobs, you had a strong tax base, you had programming for young people, the schools were good, we probably wouldn't be where we are. But how, no, there's no silver bullet because everybody in the country is struggling, every city just about in the country is struggling with it. But if we know investments like Operation Shoestring work, that the young people that are engaged in Operation Shoestring programs do better at school, they're more engaged, they're connected to and exposed to things they would not ordinarily have access to. And they also don't get in trouble. So what would, may I start with you, because I know you struggle with this, but what can we do to keep our young people from sliding into this pipeline to prison that we keep seeing?
Well, the kind of work that Operation Shoestring is doing, and the kind of work that I've been involved in for about 15 to 20 years in terms of working with children, we want to encourage more, much more, and we want to encourage many more dollars for it because it's very important. A lot of, for instance, you know, like I said, we had a cultural center, and we had a scouting program. And we called it urban and rural scouting, and did a lot of creative things, tutoring, history, physical education and stuff with kids. So all of those things and the concentration of those things by as many organizations as possible. One of the things when I was at AAU basketball, there is no lack of men or women who want to get out there and work with these kids. But there's the AAU system in Mississippi is fairly small. It seems large to us, but compared to other places, it's fairly small. But it's not because people don't want to take these kids and work with them, because many of them don't have the resources. So I would encourage you to put money into things like Operation Shoestring. And I talk about it in basketball terms because that's what I'm used to. But there's all kinds of terms. There's drama, there's training children to be in business occupations. There's all kinds of things that these programs can do, and they do. And so I just want to, and when you get the little letter in the mail, somebody said, my little group is trying to raise some money, be very receptive to that, because that very much helps. So on that line of thinking, we have to create more and more dollars which will help access these young programs so that they can, because they will deliver the young people. They will deliver the young people. They will deliver them through educational crises and things of that nature, and we'll do better. There's no question about that.
Thank you. Well, we have a couple of questions from the audience, and I'll throw out one. Lanier High School. It's in the heart of this neighborhood. Feeder system. And this would be, I would like for all three of you to respond to it. What do you all feel about Lanier High School becoming a charter community school? Do you support this change? And if so, why, or why? If not, why not?
You want me to answer?
Go first, yeah.
I'm against it. And that might not be the best place to say it, but the reality is that I'm very suspicious of anything that takes dollars from public education. Okay? Very there's nothing that can work. But I've found, in the little research I've done, I've seen as many failing charter schools as I've seen successful ones. I think that, and I'm trying to not exasperate class differences. I'm trying to bring people together. And public education helps bring people together. We have to do the kind of energy that we're trying to do, and I think some good people are trying to do with charter schools, could perhaps be better spent challenging rules and things which have to be changed a bit in order for us to address the problems we got in public schools. I think that's extremely important. We have to correct the public school problems, or else we'll be creating a disinfected class as other people move on, okay? And that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. And you may think it's working, it's certainly not gonna solve crime. Certainly not gonna solve crime. And I understand the struggle of a parent to find a school to put their skill. I've been through the struggle. I've been in the struggle. I've been in it as a student, and I've been in it as a parent. But we'll have to win that struggle. We cannot leave 47% of our population. Is another 50% of us find a charter school to go to and think that the fight is over. That's not going to work. And so I'm suspicious about anything that takes money away from the public education system. Now, you show me that that's not the case. I'm not biased toward people making their choices of where they go to school and making their choices where their children go to school. I'm not against that at all. But when we start talking about taking public dollars away from the education system, I'm also very aware about how that came about. I don't know if we know it or not, but there was no public education system in Mississippi for the most part prior to the end of slavery, all right? So there was people who had been deprived of an education who got into the Reconstruction legislators and created the public education school or system. And to me, that's a legacy which is very precious. And I think that we need to honor it because it is an effort. So it created education for all the people of Mississippi, not just for the black people coming up off those plantations, but for poor white people who never had an opportunity to go to school prior to that. And so what we need to do is to make sure that that kind of legacy is protected and that it's enhanced. Now, am I against private schools? No. I went to a private school. I have a child that went to private school at least 2 years, not at all opposed to that. But to use public money for private schools, unless you can show me that that's not going to in any way affect what we're doing in public schools, then I got a problem with it. Okay.
I think I might have skipped over the crime question a little bit too. You touched on it there.
Yeah, well, yeah. We got a lot to do with the crime situation. Right now we have to. I think education is part of it. Economics is part of it. We got to get people jobs, and then the other part of it is getting ways where we can. Right now we got problems with jails. Locking people up. We got jails overcrowding and things of that nature. And so we got to get a little more clever or a little more specific about locking folks up who are really dangerous, and keeping them there, and locking somebody up for, well, I don't know. This is probably what will be published in the newspaper tomorrow, but for having a barely detectable amount of marijuana in their car, and keeping them there, and I'm against marijuana, y'all. Okay, against marijuana. Against marijuana. I want to go on record to say that. But we also have to be intelligent about the way that we run our system. So we have to be focused on stopping serious crimes or crimes which lead to serious crimes. That's what we have to do in making sure that our police power is exercised in a way in which it does that the best, right?
Okay, I got a two-part question here now. That I've got to answer the question about Lanier High School, and you might not know anything about that at all, Governor. But can you speak to the charter school issue and the crime issue and how you?
Well, I can. Start off with charter schools. I think charter schools are a very good idea for providing competition so that parents have more choices, particularly when we're in districts where the public schools are not getting the job done. And whether Lanier is appropriate to be a charter school is something I don't know enough about to have an opinion. But I think charter schools are helpful a lot of places. Crime, you know, I think we need to be tough on crime. People need to think that apprehension is going to be at a very high rate, and if you're caught committing a crime, you're going to be punished. I think the mayor, though, makes a very good point. We've got 20-something thousand inmates in the Mississippi correctional system who are actually incarcerated, who are actually in jail somewhere, and virtually every one of them deserves to be there. But a lot of them don't need to be there as far as protecting us from the public. Mississippi should be proud. Our recidivism rate, that is the number of inmates who come back out and commit another crime, 27%. It's half the national average. The national average is about 55%. Chris Epps and the people that work with him and all the other people involved, the State Workforce Investment Board, who do job training for inmates, incarceration is supposed to be more than just putting somebody away. We need to get people where when they come back out, they can be and will be productive citizens. And we do a pretty good job of that. And I think that's important. It is very expensive, not as expensive as some people tell you, but it costs us about $14,000 to incarcerate somebody for a year, and that ain't chump change. Particularly, you know, if they've committed a crime, if they've been punished for the crime, if they have been given an opportunity for rehabilitation so that they can go out and work. As I say, in Mississippi, we find that about 3 out of 4 of those never commit another crime. That's something we ought to be proud of, actually.
It costs us about twice as much to incarcerate somebody as it does to educate them, according to the statistics.
Oh, I wouldn't take that number too far, Alita. We spent about $4.3 billion on public education in Mississippi.
When you
Federal,
look at
state,
it,
local.
that's community college, that's higher ed and K-12?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We spent about $4.3 billion on K through 12. Now, part of that's state appropriated money, which is about 2 point something. But then you take the federal money and the county money and the local money, and you're up in about $10,000 per student per year in K through 12. A lot of people don't count the federal and local. Local governments put up about a third of the money. It used to be 35%.
We need to look at your numbers, our numbers say, but Reverend Tonkle wanted to particularly get a quick response, and I know we're running out of time here, on what your thoughts are about Lanier High School as a charter. And then we have one last question on the card.
It's close to us, and we have people who are really people of goodwill that are concerned about looking at that as an option. And so my response is that the whole concept is not either good or evil. It's something that we really do need to talk about and to be able to sit down together with the people in the public school and see what's lacking and what alternative devices could bring to it, how it could be made better. And so what I think is, I just really do think that we need to have more of what we're trying to do here, and that is getting to know one another to the point that we can respect each other's place, but we can really talk honestly about some of our concerns without somebody thinking that we're trying to tear down or change. And so my response, that's it. Let's visit with one another, let's talk with one another, but let's don't see the ones who come in as enemy or as friend in particular, but as somebody who's trying to deal with what's obviously a problem. Well,
that could be a good ending comment, but I have to acknowledge this question, and it's kind of an interesting one. But I'll use it also as the closeout comments for everybody here, in terms of, we really would like to know from you, from the time you started coming down here to have this conversation. And at the end of the conversation, if anything has changed for you, or is there any greater understanding among the people on the podium, which is what we try to get out in these conversations with community. But this question statement is, the chaos theory states that the greatest change, typically from a place of dysfunction to harmony, evolves from a state of chaos. Jackson is changing. Are we on our way into chaos, or are we on our way out of chaos?
You're right about that.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we're on the way out, okay? I think, and I say that in a historical tune, we perhaps have been on the way out for a while, but it clear is that we take the history from where it started. I can't think of too many days I want to go back to, okay. So, I mean, I'm not trying to get back on the plantation. I'm not trying to do any of those things. So if we start looking at from where it started to where we are now, we probably have been on the way out for a while. And this period of time marks a time, hopefully, that we can accelerate that departure from the chaos into a sense of humanity and where we're going. So I think that's good. And I think that that's reflected in a number of the comments that were made up here today. We may have some philosophical disagreements about how you accomplish something, but we certainly are together on the fact that our children need to be strongly educated and that they need to be an asset to our community. And so the ways we do that is something that we can continue to discuss and to work for. Right.
Thank you. Reverend Tonkel?
Me?
Yes.
John Claypool, when he was alive, used to love to say this. He used to said, creation should always move from chaos to cosmos. And I thought it was a wonderful statement. I understood a little bit of it. I think that we probably need to move from divisiveness to community. And I think a sense of common unity, a commitment to one another. And the way it has affected me and the way it's meant to me today is interesting, because I knew about the mayor from the paper and the things I knew about Governor Barber from a couple of contacts we've had across the years. But I felt like in this brief time that we've got to know each other as human beings, as people with hopes and dreams and ambitions. And I think that's what we all need for the city. And that would be my hope, that we would have the kind of respect that calls us to get to know one another, and that we can create some vision and some option and some opportunity for people.
Thank you. Governor?
I think Jackson's best years are in front of us, and I look forward to the mayor being a leader. To, you can call it in or out, but I think it's up.
Me too. Me too.
And your experience here today
No, it's
in this
delightful.
conversation?
It's delightful. Well, I think we need to pass the hat one more time.
Let's give them all a round of applause. Thank you so much.
I have to tell you that I, like everybody else, speaking of chaos, thought some of that might happen on the stage today before it happened, but we definitely had Cosmos, and I thank all of you and for making that happen. Usually, after these conversations, I pull out the nuggets. All four of these folks did that in the past 5 minutes, so I'm not going to do that. I will ask that you go to our website, sign up for an email, go to our Facebook page in the next couple of days. You'll get some of the nuggets from this, and we want that to be carried forward. I think we in America, and we particularly in Jackson, we are passionate about, maybe both because of, in spite of the challenges born of our history, and our impatience, our bias for action. Governor Barber, to use a term that you used a lot when you were governor, we want things fixed now, right? We want a silver bullet. They don't exist. We all want a road to Damascus experience, or we want to be part of one happening. I don't think they exist. change happens over time. I think what you saw today and what you're seeing that's been happening for a while and will happen in the future if we're faithful and we're open to it is an opening for change that hasn't happened before. And while I appreciate the Shoestring Love Fest, because it was great today, I couldn't have paid for that, it's really about all of us stepping up in our own places where we operate, city government, in the schools, in our neighborhoods, in our businesses, in our congregations. It's about us stepping up and realizing life is more than just us. If we focus on life outside of ourselves and our families and our friends and our neighbors and our community and people, maybe especially who don't look like us and don't sit at the table with us normally, that ends up helping us. It's good for all of us. If you pull out a coin or maybe even a dollar bill, you'll see the Latin words, and I had to go to my wife to make sure I got the translation right, e pluribus unum, right? Most of us know what that is. No, it's not a record label, though some people will know that reference. It's not just a record label. From many, one. This is an opportunity to really live into that. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for the support of our work. Thank you for listening to all four of these people. I really do believe that our cities and our metro areas' best days are ahead of us.